Udi, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I know we were in the sort of green room talking about how long we've known each other. And I remember meeting you for the first time. I believe it was at a sales hacker conference and or a sales hacker event outside of Dreamforce. And you were doing all the incredible things that have now led to Gong being Gong. And for everyone that watches this show, everyone knows Gong and the incredible brand that you built. But why don't you just take a quick second just to kind of introduce yourself, tell folks if they have been living under a tree a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see you again, Jorge. It's always wonderful to collaborate together. I'm Udi Ledergor. I work for Gong. I'm currently Chief Evangelist and formerly Chief Marketing Officer. I was marketer number 1 and employee number 13 at Gong. And I was fortunate enough to help the company grow from those 13 employees to about 1,300 these days, and from 11 customers to over 4,500. So it's been quite a fun journey. I've led several marketing teams before that. And today I do some board and advisory work along with my full-time job at Gong.
Awesome. Let's dive in here, particularly around the brand building, because you've been known to be ultra creative, having that bold kind of approach to brand building from day one. I like to say that you put the B2C and B2B. And if you were to have to give advice to marketing leads out there around specifically convincing that CEO board to take this bold approach, especially when, a lot of aspects of brand building are a little harder to kind of track attribution on, any advice that you would give? And I know you had a great opportunity to work with your CEO that maybe was a little more aligned with being bold, just based off of everything I've known. But any advice you would give marketing leads?
Yes, I think if there's one rule that guided me throughout all these years, it's that different is better than better. And what I mean by that, you can think of it as when everyone zigs, you zag. But if you're just trying to blend in and follow what people call best practices, they're just boring practices by the time you start using them because everyone has been using them. It doesn't mean that you've got to ignore any learnings that are out there, but trying to do what others are doing will make you blend in at best. And that's not what you're trying to do as a early stage startup, and even later stage startup. You're trying to stand out, and trying to play everyone's game and doing it better means you've got to do it 10 or 20 times better to stand out. And that's really hard. And an easier way, I think a better way, is to do something different. So whether everyone, when we started, we're using these blues and grays and whites to look very corporate-y, we used fuchsia pink and purple. And everyone was trying to look serious, and we had a crazy bulldog as a mascot. Everyone was sounding like a gardener or a forester, and we sounded like your friendly pal trying to help you figure out sales. So just by being different, I think that helped us cut through all the noise.
That was going to be my question. Like, how do you actually cut through all the noise? And I know that you were on the GTM Fund podcast recently talking about how sort of B2B content teams should focus on making sure that their content is so good that people would pay for it. Do you have any frameworks or any recommendations for B2B marketers on how to kind of like determine their approach to making their content this great?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's 3 characteristics or attributes that every great piece of content has. Number 1, it's hyper relevant to its audience. So that already tells you that whoever's writing it needs to really know your target audience. If you're hiring either AI or offshoring your content creation or outsourcing it to someone who doesn't understand your target audience, you're never going to produce fantastic content. I have yet to see one company that's producing standout content that's being done outsourced or generated using AI these days. I don't think it can be done. The second thing is it has to be interesting and timely. So you need to understand what your audience is trying to accomplish this month or this quarter or this week, and create content that helps them solve those problems and do their work more efficiently. Examples can be, Gong is known for putting out content based on data that shows what's actually working in sales. And today companies like Lavender are doing that well, and Drift and HubSpot did it in their heyday to their audiences of marketers, but really intimately knowing your audience so you can produce content that is timely. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is to make it immediately and easily applicable. So don't give me a 40-page white paper that I need a long holiday weekend to consume. Give me something that I can digest in 30 seconds or maximum 5 minutes to learn something new. I'll give you an example right now. If you start a cold call by asking, how have you been? You're going to keep the person on the call much longer than you ask, how are you? That took me 10 seconds, and I just gave you a new skill that you can try in your next cold call. That's a good piece of content because it's hyper relevant if you're a salesperson. It's timely because you've got 80 more cold calls to make today, and it's immediately applicable. I taught you something new in 10 seconds. So we continue to put out tips like this on our social media, in our webinars, in our ebooks, in our emails. That's the type of content that works really, really well.
And I know you sort of alluded to it earlier, and I think this is one of the things that I observed that Gong really crushed it on the many things, but having that first party data, right, that you were able to pull from your calls. So for the folks out there listening, any tips on being able to find that information? I know this is hard to sort of answer because it's relative to the business.
No, I've thought about this a lot, and since I've done it at several companies, I'm convinced that most companies who have any sort of real technology have a way of using their proprietary data to produce this type of exclusive content that your audience can't get anywhere else. Everyone says, "Oh, you work for Gong. That's such a sexy field. Of course you can do this." But I work for something boring. I can't produce content like that. I call BS. I think every company in every field can produce interesting content. As long as you know what your audience is interested in and what problems they're trying to solve, you can cater to those needs. At a company I worked at before Gong, a company called Panaya, we did something that's probably the definition of unsexy technology. It was ERP upgrade automation. It's as boring as it sounds, but we produced exciting content that people couldn't wait to receive in their inboxes. And if we were late to produce one of our quarterly analysis reports, we used to get angry emails from prospects asking, when are you sending us your quarterly content? Because we're waiting for this. This is true. So you can produce this for any type of field. Yes, I think there's a very high bar when you can use your own data. And once you have even a few customers and you start analyzing their data, whether you're analyzing web traffic or what's working on landing pages or what works for sales, or what types of videos are going to get attention, or what emails are going to get opened, whatever your field is, once you start doing the analysis and producing exclusive data that is interesting and timely and hyper relevant to your audience, they're going to love it and they're going to be all over it. If you don't happen to have exclusive data you can use, you can always create the data in marketing by doing a survey or some other form of thought leadership, but it has to be at a high enough bar because everyone has an opinion about everything. So that just because you have an opinion is not going to make you stand out. It has to be an interesting point of view that's non-obvious. If you put out a piece of content that shares something that everyone already thinks or was last year's unpopular opinion, but by now it's just common practice, that's not going to help you stand out. But if you truly have a visionary way of looking at the market, look at the stuff that Elon Musk puts out there. Regardless if you love him or hate him, it doesn't matter. You can't argue with his visionary views on the world. I mean, he's already changed space travel and electric cars and energy. And just by having a very, very different, bold opinion, you can easily stand out and get a lot of attention. So that's a way of doing that without proprietary data.
Yeah, and I think just to double click on the data that I remember, well, I know you're still putting this data out, but I remember the insights such as like, hey, based on analyzed calls, we've noticed that if you use this word or you say something this way, it's going to increase your conversion rate or your deal size is increased, those sort of things, right? And so for the folks out there, again, try to find that unique data point or that unique position that you can kind of derive from your data that is specific to your product, and to Udi's point, like being able to actually have it stand out so it's not something that everyone sort of knows already, right? And we see a lot of that, especially with LinkedIn, right?
And yes, and some of those questions can be trivial things that people didn't even consider validating in data. I'll give you two quick examples. We all use and and like in our speaking, whether we're on a sales call or on a podcast. And sales coaches and sales managers have been spending, I don't know how many thousands of hours trying to weed those out of their salespeople. Well, we looked at the data, and it turns out that filler words have zero impact on salespeople's win rates. You can use as many ums and ers as you want, or you can be the perfect speaker that never uses them, and that doesn't affect your win rates. So we can all stop wasting thousands of hours on coaching against that and focus on things that do matter. Here's one that does matter that to the best of my knowledge, nobody checked before we did. We found out that salespeople that use swear words like the F word or the S word or the F-bomb, they actually win more deals than people who don't use that. And the way to maximize the impact, the positive impact of doing that, is by using it as a mirroring technique. So if you're my prospect, Jorge, and you use one of those words and make me feel comfortable using those words, and then I reciprocate with the same language, I have increased the rapport and trust between us, and I can increase my win rates by up to 8% by doing just that when all other things are equal. So these are really interesting insights that salespeople love. And of course, when we published a story like that, it got a ton of sort of virality and lots of comments from people who had a field day using all their colorful language because they felt that we gave them a license to do so. But then there were also people, thankfully, who were appalled that we were suggest using such language in a professional setting. So that's every marketer's dream, to create something that's not trivial, that is an unpopular opinion, that there is some argument about, that might be polarizing, might be controversial. That's what creates great content marketing.
One thing that comes to mind around the uhs and the ums and all that is that it's more human, right? We're not robots. And the F words or other colorful words. I remember going to a Tony Robbins conference years ago, and he was just dropping F-bombs like crazy. And I was like, this is interesting, but he was capturing my attention, right? And one of the things that he said was that it develops trust. If you can be that authentic and just real and say, you know what the fuck, right? Like I feel this way, right? That it develops that trust. So that really resonates. I remember that when that first came out, and I go, God, this is awesome. That's a brand in B2B is being so authentic. And frankly, it was one of the things I remember when that data came out that really made me, just as an individual in the space, really lean in and go, man, Gong, they're honest, they're authentic, they're not hiding behind the corporate sort of culture kind of thing. And at least for me, that was something that really attracted me to the brand.
It's absolutely true. It's funny, Jorge, just last night I was watching a new TED Ed video with my daughter, and they put out a new one about filler words. So I can send you the link later or just look it up. It's a new TED Ed video about filler words. And it turns out that they've existed for as long as humans have been talking, and they exist in every single language. Turns out there's a different version of and in every language, which is kind of funny. But they do actually do everything that you just say. They tested this on people in university labs. And when someone says because he's looking for the right word, the person listening to him is going to remember the next word a lot more than if he didn't use before that. And there's beautiful gems like that. So don't worry about your filler words. They're a natural part of human conversation, and they're usually very helpful.
That's awesome. For someone whose second language is English, and I had to kind of learn. Now my primary language is English after 41 years speaking it all the time. But it makes me feel a lot better that I don't have to be perfect, right? And that actually helps me with results, because that was one of the things that I remember when I first got into sales, and I was doing like those door-to-door type of Cutco knife type things, but with a different product. And I remember being in the southern region of the United States selling this. And so some folks would call this like the Bible Belt and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I remember being so nervous because I was going, gosh, I have this accent from Miami, and this was a long time ago, and it's very much a Latin kind of, as everyone knows, dynamic down here in Miami, but going to this region that was very, very southern. And I did really well. And it was so interesting because I was actually one of the top salespeople that year.
Not surprised.
And people were just loving the dynamic, and it was really awesome. So that really changed my worldview tremendously, because I think sometimes we don't have an understanding of different cultures, and sometimes our differences are actually the things that unite us, right?
Yes, and just another last tidbit from that TED video, which confirms what you just said, and that is the use of filler words does not decrease as your command of the language does increase. So whether you're a novice English speaker or have been speaking it since the day you were born, you're going to continue using a lot of filler words. It's not a sign that you're still learning a language. It does not decrease.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears quickly to one of our favorite topics. Since I've been in the SaaS world, sales and marketing alignment has just been something that's constantly being spoken about, and that I still haven't really seen people quite get. And I don't know if this is something that is a human condition issue. Is this a software issue? Is this incentives misalignment? From your perspective, and I know you've done an incredible job, just given that I know a lot of folks that have worked with you on really aligning sales, right? I remember Chris Orlob and those, the early Gong Gang. Like, you just seem to almost create an environment, at least from the outside, where like sales and marketing were like best friends, right? Yeah. And you didn't see that traditional sort of conflict. Any sort of advice that you would give leaders out there around truly starting to get this alignment stuff finally solved?
Yeah, and that's a big topic, and I'll say that it has at least two big components. One of them is the hard side, not hard in the sense of difficult, but hard in the terms of analytics and numbers and reports and dashboards. And then there's the softer side. I don't think I'm an expert on the hard side of sales and marketing alignment. If you want great resources, the Slack team wrote a great book about aligning sales and marketing. Carrie Lou Dietrich writes about this a lot. Trisha Gelman writes about this a lot. There's plenty of content about all the reports and dashboards and metrics that you want between sales and marketing. But I think what you're alluding to, which I think we did really, really well at Gong, is the softer side of sales and marketing alignment. And I can give a few tips on that, because I think that even if you have all the right dashboards, if the humans are not talking to each other, it's not going to be enough. It's just not going to work. And I wrote a fun little article that I've presented in different forums, and I call it the CRO coffee test. So if you're a CMO or head of marketing and you don't know how your head of sales, your CRO takes their coffee, you're not doing sales and marketing alignment right. So think about that. Do you know what coffee they take, how many sugar or cream? If you don't know that, then you're not spending enough time with them. And you should change that until you know exactly how they take their coffee, so you can bring them a coffee knowing that they will drink it. And I did this in person with my longtime CRO at Gong, Ryan Longfield. Back when we were in a full in-office culture, we used to take a coffee walk every week. We used to carve out the time and walk to a nearby coffee place on Mission Street in San Francisco, got our blue bottle coffee, and we chatted about how's the family and how's the summer going. And then, of course, touch on business as well, talking about what's working, what's challenges each of us are seeing that we can help with. So I didn't want to surprise them at the big pipeline meeting the next day with, we're running short on, enterprise pipeline. I shared that in a one-on-one setting, explained what we're doing about it, and we figured out together what we're going to do. And then when we walked into the pipeline meeting, 9 times out of 10, we were aligned. There was no finger pointing. We were working together to present the CEO and the CFO and others in the meeting with the solution that we're working on. And it was this almost perfect harmony. And that's how you do it. We hated surprising each other. So we always shared bad news and other surprises in advance. And then we showed up as one team. And, when we presented to the board, we had a unified set of slides. Here's how it's going with pipeline and with sales and with marketing. And here's how we're tackling our problems together. And that was part of the magic that made it work. And if you're curious how Ryan takes his coffee, the answer is he doesn't. He takes tea. So I know that because I spend enough time with him.
Well, I love that, because that's what I believe is the issue, right? I don't believe, my personal opinion is, I don't think it's our tools are the problem. Yeah, there can certainly be functionality in our collaboration tools and so on and so forth, internal tools that can help with things. But to your point, if the humans are not doing things, if they don't care, if there's no connection there, it doesn't matter if your strategies or your internal handoff processes and so on, if you don't care to make, for example, if you're an SDR and that has to support an AE, and if you don't care to actually help that AE and the other way around, help the SDR win within their respective roles because you care about them as human beings, that's my personal opinion. I think it's very difficult to have or to get the most out of that relationship. And
Yeah, I can give you two quick examples because I don't want it to sound like it was just Udi doing this brilliant work with Ryan. It was not. It was the entire team. I think my longtime VP of demand gen, Russell Banzon, who was at Gong for I think over 5 years easily. And when Ryan joined, we lost a leader on the SDR team, and we knew that without a strong leader on the SDR team, we're not going to make the quarter's quota. And so we asked Russell, who was in marketing at a time where SDR reported to sales. We asked him, Russell, could you take on managing this inbound SDR team along with your regular job as VP or back then director of demand gen, because we need you to step in? And he said, yeah, of course. And that created so much trust between marketing and sales, having a marketing leader step in when sales needed them and run the SDR team. And they crushed it, of course, that quarter under Russell's leadership. So that's one example. And the last one I'll give is from our ABM team. So ABM teams, often people don't really understand how they're contributing, what they're doing. Yeah, they're doing all this stuff and events, but how's it really mattering to business? And at Gong, there's a great example of this where Laura Vitaro heads our ABM program, and she's been heading them for almost 5 years now. And her team is embedded within the sales team. So when there's an enterprise sales meeting, there's an ABM manager sitting in that meeting, and she's listening to which accounts they're struggling with, which regions they have problems with. And then she'll go and sit down one-on-one with each of those reps and say, let's build an account plan for how we're going to penetrate the decision makers that you need. And I'm here to support you. And they know that ABM is there to help them win. And they don't ask how ABM is helping. They can see this every day because they show up at their meetings, and then they sit with them and they follow up and they build account plans and they follow up on those. So that's how you do it. That's how you create relationships with sales and marketing.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And for the folks out there, being human matters, right? I know we work in software. I get it. I know there's tremendous AI that's doing incredible things, but at least for the foreseeable future, being human really matters. And I just want to double click on that. Let's talk a little bit about Gong, because you continue to innovate. You continue to lead the pack. I don't know that I've seen many brands just in general that have been able, specifically in B2B, right, continue to be the leading brand, right? Like I think like I've seen sort of, peaks with brands, and then they sort of like level off and things have changed. Yeah, I think like over the course of my career, I've seen maybe brands start off really bold and exciting, and then something happens, right? Whatever that may be, down market, change in leadership, whatever it is. But you and the organization, the brand, have continued to operate. It feels like it was just yesterday where I was going like, holy shit, this is like, the consumer brand in B2B, as I was mentioning earlier. How have you been able to do that?
It's kind of an open secret. So our CEO, Amit Bendov, put this really well several years ago, and I've been quoting it since. We built a go-to-market team so good that it could sell a mediocre product. And we built a product and engineering team so great that even a mediocre go-to-market team could sell their product. And luckily we did both. So the sky is the limit. And our plan is very simple. We are going to out-engineer and out-market every other company out there. That is our plan. The big secret is out. And we're doing that. And we're putting our money and our effort and our energy where our mouth is. So our engineering team is larger than most companies in our spaces in total employee count. We have so many AI engineers just coming out with these new amazing things every single week. We have the best sales team and the best marketing team in the business that continue to evolve. We brought in new leaders once we hit certain milestones. We brought in leaders who have seen the next milestones that we want to hit to get us there faster and more in a more structured, responsible way. So that's all we're doing. We're out engineering and out marketing everyone and continuing to innovate on both those fronts.
And I've heard that a couple of times from your CEO. So that's awesome to see that mantra still continues. Real quick, because I know you've been doing a lot of stuff with AI, any sort of product advances or functionality or anything at all related that folks out there who are go-to-market leaders should keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think one of the really exciting releases that we just announced earlier this week that I'm personally excited about is going to change the way that sales leaders manage their sales team. So a big part of their time today is managed on collecting the facts of what their reps are doing so that they can coach them on how to be better and strategize on the deal. So one example is most sales team, once they get to a certain size, they adopt one of the common sales methodologies. It could be BANT or MEDIC or Challenger or one of those. And they spend a ton of effort implementing it, but then even more effort just running it. Because if you're using MEDPIC, that's like, I don't know, 8 letters that you've got to check in every discovery call, listen to the whole call and figure out, did the rep ask about the M? Did they ask about the E? Did they ask about the first E and the second E and so on? That takes forever. And now Gong does that auto-magically for you. Gong automatically scores any sales methodology, whether it's standard or bespoke that your organization has put together. And we have customers who have their own methodology. So we set that up once in the system, and then Gong just listens to all your calls and grades and scores them magically, autonomously. And that leaves the sales manager a lot more time. Instead of collecting facts and figuring out what happened, everyone now knows and agrees on what happened. Now the starting point is, okay, how do we win this deal? Let's strategize. Let's use our time to what's missing so we can go win this deal. But nobody's going to be spending time on these nonsense tasks of listening to a call and using a manual scorecard to say, yes, he asked about the B, but not about the T. That's such a waste of time in 2024. So I'm super excited about that.
That sounds incredible. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Really, really appreciate it. If folks are listening to this and going, George, you sound like a fanboy, it's because it's true. I am a fanboy. I love what you've been able to build over the years. And I remember this was about 2000. I'm going to say this was 2017, 2018, perhaps, or so, give or take. And so again, just congratulations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it has been, right? If folks wanted to get in contact with you, follow you, learn from you, I think I know the channel, but just in case, what are the best URLs or channels to reach you?
Yeah, I would go straight to LinkedIn. There's only one Udi Ledergor on LinkedIn, so I should be pretty easy to find. The only other Ledergor there is my husband, so pretty easy to find me. And yeah, I do share every day some of my experience on marketing, some of the latest innovations on AI helping sales, and just some general life lessons I've learned at my ripe old age. So please follow me and connect, and looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Yeah, I do love those too. Just good reminders throughout the day. Well, Udi, have a great day, and thanks again.
Thanks for having me.